a nice universal message. Protection and preservation of our living sea and communities these days includes things such as plastic pollution. Thank you, Patricia, for the work you do. Includes the twin of climate change, which is ocean acidification, issues with fisheries worldwide. Really, the ocean for many years has been sort of the protector for the planet in that it's absorbed excess carbon. It's been where things have gone when things are thrown away, so that was the away, but now the ocean is beginning to experience the stress of that. So what we're doing is we're teaching the next generation to take care of that. Sir?
I have to, you said they're doing navigation?
Yes.
What is that thing they're all holding?
That is a handheld compass.
Okay.
So if you go down to West Marine, you can pick one of those up.
Gotcha, I thought maybe they were the new version of a sextant.
Yeah, well, you can actually get these, so these were given to us by West Marine. I don't know the actual product name, but we've been using these for quite a bit, so this is navigation on the boat.
This is a new version of a sextant.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right.
There you go. So we engage 4th through 6th grade students, so that's ages 9 through 12. And we have 3 stations. One is navigation, as you pointed out, and some of that's the old-fashioned methods of navigation. Also, ocean and watershed ecology. So on the boat, we learn about, the students learn about nearshore kelp forest habitat. On land, in our education center, they learn about watersheds that flow to that nearshore kelp forest habitat. The connectors there are pretty clear. For example, toxoplasmosis was a virus that killed sea otters and was one of the leading causes that was really challenging the population numbers. And that comes, as we've recently learned, from that virus comes from the Pinto Lake area, from opossum and cat feces. Really cannot be filtered out by the sanitary sewer. Tragedy for sea otters, and for us, it's also a way that we can make the connection for students. So, as I mentioned, the classroom is Monterey Bay, so we use the Team O'Neill catamaran. This is a catamaran that Jack purchased in 1983. He's had other boats before that. And we also have an education center at the Santa Cruz Harbor, a building that Jack built in 1965. We now occupy the upstairs of that building, and the west end of that building is occupied by our education center, as well as the Surfrider Foundation's water quality test lab, and then we have private tenant spaces on the other side. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Our area of service is Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey counties is the bulk of what we do. We serve up to 210 classes a year. That number is chosen because we have a capacity in the Santa Cruz Harbor. So you look at what the school year is and you overlay that with the months that we can actually get a boat out of the harbor, which is most of the year, with the exception of winter, when the harbor shoals up with sand and you cannot get a boat out that has a draft of more than 5 feet. That's why they have a dredge program there to keep the channel clear. And then summer tends to be light, so that's about the number of students. So the classes we do, it's about 5,500 students per year. Classes apply to our program online. We have an application that goes live on May 1st on our website. That fills up very quickly. The application will be closed down probably this week. We're up to around 250 applications. And our education coordinator will begin scheduling classes. The program is free. As I mentioned before, every class does a community service project. We also assist with bus transportation. We raise funds for bus transportation as well. That's a major obstacle for lower income schools to put in our program, is getting here. So if they get here, they get the free program. Some of them can't even get here, so we're helping them with that as well. So I mentioned the program is free. We pay for bus transportation. A very important element of what we do is we also supply classroom curriculum. So we have a field trip. It's a one-day field trip. That integrates to the science program that every classroom that does our program has in their own classroom. We supply curriculum that is science curriculum, that's ocean-based, and that is a very easy tool for teachers to use. It's free. We used to have it in a PDF form on our website. Recently, we undertook a partnership that I'll talk about later on with the Pepper College Readiness Network. So now every class that uses our program has free access to this online curriculum on an easy-to-use online platform. So that way, we can be considered to be a science shop for every class that uses us. Field trip, curriculum, ability to get to the field trip, community service, and it all integrates together. So last year we served 202 classes, 5,281 students. Our total is around 93,536 students. We served 202 classes last year, not 210. We had an issue with being able to get out of the harbor last year, issue with the dredge program. This year, the numbers will be similar because we had the El Nino-driven storms that literally threw hundreds of thousands of tons of sand into the channel of the harbor. The dredge, there's two pieces of equipment that do the dredge program. One of those pieces of equipment burned out, so we couldn't operate for a couple of weeks. So we can do a program inside the harbor, going up and down the harbor, but you don't get the quality of plankton, and you certainly don't get to do the work that we do with sea otters and nearshore kelp forest habitat when you're inside the harbor. So we're hoping that the harbor's dredge program will have a better year this next year, and we'll be able to serve more school classes. Most of the students that undertake our program have never been on the ocean before. This is huge. 56% last year were low income, 29% middle income, 15% were higher income. So if you look at who we serve, because we're a free program, we really serve a population, a slice of the student population that looks very much like the population of our area, really. So we've been able to take away those economic barriers, and we're serving a good cross-section. And because we're serving 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and many schools will concentrate us on one grade, we're able to serve a lot more students. Last year, we only had 7% repeat students. So that way we're able to spread it out more evenly amongst the population. We serve a number of schools in the area. This is a word cloud that was done last year, the school districts. You notice the Pajaro Valley is very large there, and the reason for that is that district is very large, encompasses Aptos as well as Watsonville and North Monterey County. But it's pretty well spread out. You'll notice some Santa Clara County schools there, Soquel, Union, Scotts Valley Unified is a very big one for us as well. We also have a special program that we've been doing since 1999 as well. There's a couple in the harbor, Tom and Judy Webster, who had a son named Adam who had Down syndrome. And he unfortunately passed away at the young age of 21 in 1999. He had gone sailing with his parents when he was young, and they found that it was not only a great sensory experience for him, but he was actually able to learn some things, and it really increased his sensory abilities, and he was able to absorb things that he wouldn't on land, and not being, with the rolling of the waves and feeling the motion of the ocean, if you will. So they started the Adam Webster Memorial Fund. The idea of the Webster Memorial Fund is for cognitively disabled youth to be able to have a full experience according to their individual abilities. And I say individual because we serve up to 12 students in each of these classes. Each one comes with their own aid. Each of those students has individual, unique strengths and challenges. So what we're able to do with the Webster Fund is we're able to calibrate the program to each of those individuals. And each of those kids has something known as an individual education program. It's different than kids in the general population. So, one of our special education teachers from a couple of years ago was Tom Simpkins from here in Scotts Valley, and he made an interesting point. He, after putting his kids through our program, he said, these gifts are mostly present in their smiles. Their faces tell the story, and their story brightens every heart that comes close. When we ride the O'Neill Sea Odyssey and get to become scientists, the opportunity is pure magic. So for a lot of these kids, this is something that's unique in their lives, something they've never experienced, and it gives them an opportunity to touch another world, the world of science. So that program is ongoing. Back to the general Sea Odyssey program, we measure our impacts on an annual basis, as well as we've had a measurement for the long term. On an annual basis, we survey the students before and after the field trip. And it's a 6-question survey. We revised our survey and logic model a couple of years ago. And we gauge the delta, the difference of what children learned on our program by looking at the difference between the pre-program survey results versus the post-program survey results. We found last year that we did this year ending 2016, that overall comprehension of ocean concepts, ocean science concepts, as a result of our program rose from 73% to 95%. We also interestingly found that lower income students had a lower level of comprehension when they got to our programs. The number was well below 73%. It was in the high 60s. But when they left our program, it was at 95%. So it was an equalizer for those students. One of our instructors, Lauren Hanneman, got her master's degree in environmental education from San Jose State University in 2013, and she did a master's thesis that benefited us in that it was a peer-reviewed study of students who had been through our program. These were now high school students, so they had been through our program 5 to 7 years before. She gathered a sample of 261 students from schools in Santa Cruz, Santa Clara Valley, and Monterey County. And she found an interesting variety of results that indicate the comprehension of the students. One of those things that's very interesting and very positive was that 5 to 7 years after our program, 75% of these students retained relatively sophisticated concepts around non-point source pollution. So we talk about plastic pollution, we talk about agricultural runoff. A lot of this is non-point source pollution. This is debris that does not go through the sanitary sewer. It goes through storm drains, it goes through creeks and rivers. We don't intervene unless there's a beach cleanup between its source and the ocean. So understanding how this works is very important because it's the largest source of pollution in the ocean. 80% of it comes from land, and most of that comes from non-point source pollution. So the fact that 75% of these students were able to retain this information was a huge finding for us. We also, for appropriate reasons, we're not able to find a student in our program and then track them through the school system. There are privacy rules, there are protections from just anybody coming along and talking to a student as they're going through their educational career and later in their college career. But sometimes those students come back and find us. So a couple of weeks ago, a young man who brought his class from Salinas to our program came into my office, and he was making a purchase of some t-shirts, and he just casually mentioned, oh, by the way, I did this program 14 years ago. And so I asked him to tell us a little bit about what that means. And what he said was, for many of his students, it's their first time on the boat. Some of them haven't been to the beach. These kids remember these lessons better because it's a different environment. They get to see things in person, not in front of a textbook or on a computer screen. Again, going back to the hands-on hands-on method of learning, something that you can interact with. And, you know, kinesthetic and verbal learning are very effective for getting the point across, and certainly resonated with him, because one of the things he wanted to do with his students was to take them on Sea Odyssey when he got to be a teacher. So we've had a couple recent accomplishments as well. To help with our field trip, we decided to go from paper to iPad collection, and it's an interesting story to collect our data when we're on the boat. So students were able to collect the data on the ocean and enter it into our website in a little section for their class directly from the boat. And the interesting story about this is we actually went up to UCSC for something that's known as a hackathon. This is where you get 300 people from UCSC, CSUMB, Cabrillo College. They're all learning to code. And so you have 300 people in a room. They're all under the age of 21. And you get up there and pitch your idea, and then they'll do your project for you. So we had a group of 4 students who coalesced around our project. They call themselves the Plankton Guys. We actually signed a contract with them. The oldest one was 17 at the time, which is interesting. And they coded us this app for the iPads. And interestingly enough, the iPads themselves, speaking of Santa Cruz Rotary, the iPads were paid for by Santa Cruz Rotary. So that was a grant they did for us, so thank you for that. And we've had to do some tweaks to this over the last couple of years, but it's been a great way for us to populate our website with data. And since the students are involved and see this, and they're familiar with iPads more than they are with the paper, I mean, they're familiar with paper, but it's something that's closer to their generation, the impact is a little bit greater. We've also developed a virtual program. This is actually 3 YouTube videos of a half hour each, during which students prompt the instructor in each of the subject areas with questions. For example, you can learn about navigation by watching Adam Steckley talk about the various aspects of navigation. So you go to YouTube and you actually just plug in these titles, and they'll bring them right up for you. And then lastly, I mentioned before the curriculum that we supply to each of the classes that use our program. We actually are also selling this curriculum online nationwide. So it's a great revenue source for our program, but more importantly, we discovered early on in the process of working with the public consulting group, which manages the Pepper online website. They serve schools throughout the country and throughout the world. We found early on that there was really no curriculum aligned with next generation science standards and Common Core, which is the new coin of the realm for the standards nationwide, that had an ocean basis, and that came from a program as interesting as ours. So our education coordinator worked very closely with the team from Pepper. We signed a contract with them. This has been up for a couple of months, and it's been very successful, so we've been able to distribute this curriculum nationally, and it's great for O'Neill Sea Odyssey because it's a way for us to have a national presence and to be able to have a revenue source as well. We're very excited by the fact that Next Generation Science Standards and Common Core is now the coin of the realm, because really, with the older standards, these were subject areas such as algebra, marine science. These were subjects in a silo. So these were in silos. The subjects really didn't touch each other. Whereas the Next Generation Science Standards and Common Core, you integrate these subjects together. So literacy, science, mathematics. And if you look at our program, that's what our program's all about. We're integrating these subjects all together, and that's the way life is. So it's really a great way for students to learn this stuff. And it also gets them excited about the subjects. So navigation will actually make them excited about triangulation, make them excited about dead reckoning, or some of the algebraic concepts that lie underneath there. With our marine science section, for example, our marine science unit, that's based in plankton. And especially now with discussion of global climate change, phytoplankton, plant plankton are the source of half the world's oxygen today. So when people say that the ocean supplies half the world's oxygen, it's basically phytoplankton. That's the source of that. So these are very practical subjects. They're very real, and the kids really enjoy learning these. A couple of quick more other topics. I mentioned our education center at the Santa Cruz Harbor. On the left is the building that Jack built with 3 partners in the Santa Cruz Harbor in 1965. The first port director for the harbor had come from the Stockton Chamber of Commerce, and he asked Jack O'Neill to build a building and to have it be a ship chandlery to supply the 324 boats that were set up in the new harbor. Unbeknownst to Jack, the same port director offered exclusives to 2 other companies. So how are you gonna have 3 competing businesses be able to serve 300 boat owners and make a profit? Well, it wasn't gonna work. So Jack had brought in a company from Texas who were gonna handle the ship chandlery business. When they heard about this, they pulled out. So Jack basically had an empty building, which he filled with things like making wetsuits and a dive shop and coffee shops and other things over the years. Eventually, the building had 2 leases from the harbor. Jack and the remaining partner, Harry Hine, donated the building to O'Neill's Sea Odyssey in 2000. So we had the building and the revenue from the building for a couple of years. Our lease was expiring, so we worked out a deal with the harbor where we took the upstairs, and we had raised 1.5 million, or actually 1.3 million in donor funds. Then we took out a loan for $200,000 to renovate the upstairs. The harbor took the downstairs. That way we were able to build ourselves a permanent education center. Surfrider would get their water test lab, and we'd get a little bit of revenue from the tenants that are on the right-hand side of the building. On the right hand, the picture on the right is the current building, and on the right-hand side of it, on the top floor there, those are private tenant spaces. That 25-year lease will expire in 2028. That's 13 years from now. Or actually it's 11 years from now. Time is passing on. And so we've asked the harbor to give us a new lease at the same terms when that lease is up, so we can go out to 2053. That way we get some long-term stability in our program with our education center. Lastly, 100,000 student. We're up to about 93,500 students. With the work that we're going to be doing this summer and with our normal complement of school classes, we're anticipating reaching our 100,000 student in June 2018. But to get there, we've asked the community to help us with contributions. We are a nonprofit organization. The O'Neill family is a major supporter of our program, obviously, and we use Jack's boat, and we use the building that he gifted to us. But we're also a community-supported program. We're a nonprofit. So we've set up a website, osl100k.org, that tracks our progress in terms of number of students. And we also have a team that have been going out weekly with our program out on the water and taking pictures and recording moments and video. And that can be found on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. So you can follow us there as well. And people have been making donations to help us get to that point, 100,000 students. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your kind attention this afternoon, and see if you have any questions. And when we answer questions, I'm going to ask Adam to come up with me also, so he can help answer some of the things that I can. Yes, sir.
How long are the students on the water?
So they'll be on the water about an hour and a half, and they're with us for the rest of the time.
What do they do when they're on the water?
Yeah, so it's a 3-hour program. The first half is on the water, and they're going through, basically it's a class of up to 35 students. They're divided into 3 groups. So they go through the 3 learning stations, which out on the trampoline or the net on the bow of the boat, they'll learn about the kelp forest ecology, as Dan was mentioning. Inside the cabin, they'll learn about current radar, GPS, all the navigational.
No sextant?
No sextants, no. We don't go that far offshore to bring that into
But we'll
the.
get one in honor of you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as you saw, they're using a magnetic handheld compass, and at that point, they're taking 3 compass bearings, so they can then return to the classroom and triangulate using a chart of the Monterey Bay, and actually find the position of their boat. And so then that happens in the cabin, where they're exposed to the current technology, and then at the stern of the boat, that's where they're doing their plankton tow. So they tow about 30 feet of line connected to a small net, sampling their plankton, but also taking observations during that period of water color, water temperature, depth of the water. So where each of these 3 stations takes place for each particular group. So they're about 15-minute stations. They'll rotate through those during that hour and a half. Also, if there's time, the kids actually raise the mainsail. So it's a fun aspect. And then, of course, during the navigation, they step up at the helm and actually drive the boat for a moment, where we take a picture of them, which is printed and sent home at the end of the program. So there's a lot packed into that 3 hours. And we do, again, that same rotation once we return to the classroom. Those 3 groups are then going through our classroom, taking that information from the water one step further. And as Dan mentioned, our ecology then is talking about the watershed, and they'll use a model of the land very similar to our Santa Cruz area, and seeing that pollution, which is maybe soy sauce for motor oil, where they're actually laying out all the different forms of pollution onto the land, creating a small rainstorm with some water bottles, and seeing that pollution enter the ocean. Then they sit back and brainstorm on some of the ways that they can change that, through daily activities that they're responsible for. So, learning a lot in a shorter period of time. Yes.
What's the size of your boat?
65 feet long.
Inboards?
Correct, yes. Inboards.
One
And it's a
engine?
28-foot beam. 2 engines, 2 diesel,
engines.
yes. Yeah. You ought to come out sometime. And that's the thing, as you can see in those pictures, there's a lot of emotion and a lot of that experience that they're, not only hands-on interacting with, but just absorbing through the sensories of the sounds and the smells in the air and the views. And so through this campaign, we're trying to really kind of give people who, maybe like yourselves, who haven't been on the boat, who haven't seen the students interacting in the program, to give them that same experience or a connection to that experience. So we definitely encourage you, if you're ever interested, to please come out and see the program in action. Because to hear us talk about it, to see the pictures on the screen, it doesn't do it justice.
Are you inviting people to go as a volunteer?
Not as a volunteer, just as an observer.
Just
Yeah.
an observer.
So you can sort of sit back and see us and the students in action, both on the boat and in
I'll
the
take you
classroom.
up on this.
Absolutely, please. Yes,
Me too.
excellent, great.
So just so you can email one of us, so on our website, there's a contact.
And on the
Yeah,
paper there,
so-
you have Dan's contact information email.
I have a question. What is the age of the kids? You get high school now.
So fourth, fifth, and sixth grade is 9, 10, 11, 12 years old.
Okay, no high school.
Go ahead.
We used to serve kids 7th and 8th grade. We found, well, first of all, there's the demand for the program, so we keep the age range narrow. But also, once they get beyond 6th grade, they start to, it's not as effective, I'll put it that way. They're getting older, they're more interested in each other. I mean, it's really, so our curriculum is geared for an elementary school program, and we find that their attention really is best captured in that age range.
And you can see it as an instructor. The 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they're sponges. They want to learn, or they're very curious about all this. They ask a lot of questions. As Dan mentioned, the 7th and 8th graders, it's a different focus at that point, at least for a field trip like ours. Even though we've worked with both younger and older students over the period of the 20 or so years, 20 plus years, it's really been refined to and focused on this age group that just takes it in very well. Did you have a question?
In your view, how is the environmental health of Monterey Bay?
So Dan writes about that often in his.
So the latest condition report for the Monterey Bay Sanctuary, which is actually 6,000 square miles of ocean from Cambria up to Marin, the condition report was pretty good. So the catch of fish, I mean, salmon notwithstanding, other species were relatively healthy and were coming back. Water quality was better than okay, and certainly better than before the sanctuary was there because of the work that we've done with agriculture, the sanctuary's done with agriculture and others. So the general health of that area is pretty good. So if you were to give it a grade, and this may sound kind of capricious, but it would be a B plus. And this is compared to previous condition reports. And what condition report is for the Monterey Bay Sanctuary and for all other marine sanctuaries is you'll look at the data that they had before it was a sanctuary and look at what's happened since then and what issues have to be managed. So that's generally about the grade that's there. And the water quality is pretty good because you have a lot of circulation, not just in Monterey Bay and the deep underwater canyon, which go down to 2 miles, but also areas like off of Año Nuevo. There's just a lot of circulation. You have the California current coming through. So it's a pretty healthy environment when you look at that. That's not to mention that there are some bigger issues that are coming down the pike. I mentioned ocean acidification, which will be exacerbated off California more than other places because we have an emerging problem with lack of oxygen. And part of that's natural. There's an underwater river of water that comes across the Pacific Ocean from north of Japan. And when it arrives here, it's got a lot less oxygen than when it left because it's picking up all the carbon along the way. So when that intersects with ocean acidification, that could be a concern. Over the years, that could mean a bit of a change in terms of what we have out there. You're going to have more species like squid, fewer rockfish, because you'll just have a little bit less oxygen out there. To counteract that, there are efforts to mitigate that. One, Senator Bill Monning recently did a bill that directs the Coastal Conservancy to begin working on the replanting of eelgrass, which will absorb a lot of excess nutrients, absorb a lot of the effects of ocean acidification, return oxygen to the water. So there's efforts to counteract that. But to answer your question, pretty good. Sorry.
Any other questions? Complicated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The website also,
Thank you.
for the 100,000 student campaign is listed on your form there. If anybody wants to provide me with and the point of that is the website, you can subscribe to our Odyssey news. You'll get maybe 1 or 2 emails a month, kind of updating you on the campaign. It's a 14-month campaign, so it's going to go on for some time. So as I mentioned, you can subscribe through the website. If you wanted to give me a business card with your email, I'm happy to subscribe you as well, or we can write it down and I'll take it back. So if you'd like to, I'm happy to take that for you. And thank you for
Thank you for having us.
Tony, pick your ticket. That's right. 9:31. 9:31. You got it.
Grandpa.
I came close.
Oh, no.